I'm Steven.
And I'm Spencer. Welcome to Ragnarokast, your podcast for all things marketing and MarTech.
Hello, everyone. We're the co-CEOs of Ragnarok.
Beautiful intro. Every time. Gets me every time.
Oh, my goodness. Tear to my eye. Tear to my eye.
Hi, everyone. I'm Spencer. If you didn't already know that.
Oh, sorry. I thought we were doing the intro again.
Well, the intro, it's this time I get to say my name first. And then today we have Toby of, well, depending on your region, it's Jacquard or Jacquard. Welcome, Toby.
For me, it will always be Jacquard.
Welcome, Toby.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Good. This is what it's like for our employees, by the way. So we're not,
just so I understand, do you guys, as your intro, play the YouTube video intro of a previous podcast? And then is that the intro? Is that,
we should start doing that.
Is the editing budget that low that's how that
works? Yes.
Yeah, it is. Okay.
That would be pretty funny. Oh, we didn't know how to stop the screen share. But this is for your benefit and to get us like teed up.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's like how when they record a music video, and sometimes you'll notice that, like, so if you have kids, there's Miss Rachel, and we noticed the other day that she actually has headphones in during one of the songs that she was like AirPods, and it's because she's listening to the song at the same time.
Oh, because they're not playing it like. Yeah, okay, fine, okay.
Because they have to record her voice.
Yeah, it's more like a realism thing for you guys. It's
it's getting us pumped up, you know?
Like
there's nothing that gets me pumped up like that 5-second Ragnarokast intro.
Yeah, Salem did a good job of, like, you know, harmonizing us as much as possible. Anyway, Toby, welcome. Do you mind giving us your life story, your social security, your background and how you ended up at Jacquard, and then maybe a little bit about Jacquard?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's Toby Coulthard. I'm the Chief Product Officer of Jacquard. You can pronounce it however you'd like. We're not going to enforce a particular accent on it. I live in New York, despite my accent. I'm based in Brooklyn, working on my own Brooklyn accent, but it's not quite there yet.
You'll get it there one day, Toby. Don't you worry.
Wow.
And then before Jacquard, I was at Braze for many years, about 8 years at Braze. I was responsible there for things like solution consulting, competitive strategy. And then before that, I was at Marketing Cloud, Salesforce, as well as a few other jobs in things like Formula One and electronic engineering and IBM and a few other places. So yeah, good to be here. Now Jacquard, I'm responsible for product, and we do high performant content generation for marketers, customer lifecycle campaigns that enable marketers to increase productivity, efficiency, but most importantly, connect with their customers better and create highly engaging and personalized content for every single one of their users and customers.
Excellent. Well, thanks for coming. And actually, question. So you were at Braze before, which we knew, but
yeah.
So you were at Salesforce before that? Yeah,
Salesforce Marketing Cloud back in 2015 or so.
Wow. Yeah. So you really saw the light back then, huh?
Yeah. I was based in the UK back then, and yeah, it was surprisingly not. Compared to how big that it was, I would join right before ExactTarget got acquired. So it was right on that kind of threshold. I then left to go do a master's degree and then came back when it was Marketing Cloud. Yeah, that was right at the threshold, and it was a very different world back then, I think, than it is now.
Yes, it was.
I've toyed with the idea of like going back to school at some point. What was like if you don't mind sharing, like what was kind of the onus of that?
I was still, to be honest, I worked, I finished my bachelor's and I like worked for like the summer, and then I was like, you know, I want to continue. I was doing electronic engineering and my master's was in nanotechnology and bioelectronics, and I just wanted to kind of go into that world. I worked for McLaren Formula One in the engineering side for a little bit, and I realized that it just wasn't my vibe, and so I went back to I wanted to talk to people a little bit more than being a full electronic engineer. And so, yeah, I went back to what then was Salesforce and kind of went from there. And then I was only there for probably just over a year before Dan Head, who went over to AppBoy, who was the CRO of AppBoy, asked me to join at AppBoy. And then subsequently he went from Braze to Jacquard and brought me with him. So kind of went through the different businesses like that.
So have you been with the company since previous to the rebrand?
Braze, yeah. So I joined probably right at the beginning of 2016. We were AppBoy for a couple of years, and then I think we realized that we weren't just for apps, and we weren't all boys, and we decided to rebrand to Braze, which I think was a smart move. Yeah, that must have been 2018, and that was Marissa Aidlet, who was the CMO of Braze at the time, is actually the CMO of Jacquard now, and she was quite instrumental in the rebrand from what was Phrasey before and then Jacquard. So a lot of the DNA that went from AppBoy to Braze is part of the DNA from Phrasey to Jacquard. Love that.
That's awesome. So you've got all that Braze growth energy just ready to go.
DNA. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Surprised you didn't swing back to metallurgy after going through the rebrand.
Everyone's always asking about the Jacquard name and why, and we can obviously get into it, but there's a phenomenally few .coms left. I will put it at that, which are actual words. And I don't think we wanted to commit to some concatenation of two unrelated words, and I didn't, and I don't think the rest of them wanted to make up a word that didn't really sound like anything. And so
you mean like RagnarokMarketing.com?
Yeah, Ragnarok is an existing word. It's not like you came up with that. So I feel like you guys did a similar thing.
But we did a similar thing in that even back in 2012, Steven and I were sitting in a room for 3 days straight trying to come up with a normal sounding name. We even tried coming up with some like made up names, and it's just like none of it sounded good. Everything was taken. We're also, a New York corporation, so we needed a business name that was not already taken, and there are just so many companies in New York. So we landed on Ragnarok.
I like it for what it's worth. Yeah.
Thanks. So we completely empathize. We went through the same exercise.
I mean, the real meaning behind Jacquard was a French inventor from the 18th century who came up with what's called the Jacquard loom, which is basically the precursor to the computer to some extent. It was the first thing to take a punch card, to basically take a program and turn it into something. And we can go down the marketing spin as much as you want, but it takes lots of inputs. It weaves a very complex output, and there's plenty of parallels I think we can derive from something that's both relevant to technology and that we take many data inputs and we make a very sophisticated output. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of alchemy that goes into branding and rebranding and all that kind of stuff, and we just like the name at the end of the day.
Oh, yeah. That's like when Uber did their rebranding many years ago, and they turned their U to the side and made a C. And then they were like, it's the bits and the atoms, man.
Yeah.
What a spin on that one.
Yeah, exactly.
I've started this up a few episodes ago where I like to ask our guests to share a hot take, not a marketing example, but my hot take is that people that drink tea, just aren't badass enough to drink coffee, and they can only take can only take a quarter of the caffeine, and so they just can't leave. It's a half measure, or it's a quarter measure, really.
I think it depends on the motivation of why you're drinking it in the first place. If it's to get as messed up as possible, then people who drink coffee are not good enough to take caffeine pills. So it depends on the reason why you're drinking it in the first place. If you're doing it to get the caffeine, then actually I'd say that why stop at coffee?
It's a nice blend of caffeine and flavor.
Yeah.
Whereas tea, I actually really like tea, by the way. So I'm just trolling. So what's a marketing hot take that you have?
My marketing hot take, just before this call, I was talking to a C-suite of a engagement platform, not US based. And my hot take, which I shared with them, is I don't understand the point of a CDP. I think CDPs are a temporary fix to something that ultimately needs to be solved or should be solved and should have always been solved by either an engagement platform or anything where the data needs to be. And at the end of the day, the CDP was a hot thing for a while, but I can't imagine they'll be around for a long time. That's my hot take. Maybe it's not a hot take. Maybe everyone agrees with me.
I think it's a hot take.
It's a hot take. It's
I
a hot
think at
debate.
the end of the day, if you're an engagement platform, why would you want to, at the end of the day, get the data from the source and you want to deliver your content to where it needs to be? If it solves the problem of not having a real-time data stack, if it solves the problem of getting the data where it needs to be, then that should be done. It's like a Band-Aid over the problem. And at the end of the day, our engagement platform should have SDKs that collect the data on the web and the app. It should be able to serve content to the web, should be able to serve content to the app. There shouldn't be any middleman that makes it more difficult. And it should have real-time integrations to where the data needs to be directly and not have this thing that's trying to, people call it the piping within the house that connects all the things, but really they should be directly connected. And I especially think with things like zero copy and Snowflake data sharing, I see less of a reason why CDPs need to exist, personally.
What about a reverse ETL versus like a traditional CDP?
I think it's sort of a different way of solving the same problem. And I'm happy to be wrong, but I just think in my view, it should be a Braze or an Iterable or a Salesforce Marketing Cloud or an Adobe Journey Optimizer or a MoEngage or a Insider or whoever it might be should just get it to where it's from and connect directly to your analytics platform. It should connect directly to, well, if you're doing some kind of third-party segmentation thing, it should connect directly to Jacquard. It should, and why do you need something getting in the way? Connect directly to your data warehouse.
I think Stephen can probably speak to this more technically, but I think one thing that comes up for our clients on that is that if the automation platform is the centerpiece, problem is if you rip it out, you have to rip out everything. And the CDP is kind of a way to hedge your bets a little bit. So if you need to swap out Iterable with Braze or whatever.
True. Although the ideal is that you don't buy a platform that you have to rip out or you that occurs to me to be a second order problem to the first problem is having the wrong engagement platform and needing to swap. Now, that's fair to say that maybe the needs of today is not the same as the needs of tomorrow, and you do need to swap, but paying X amount per year on another contract just to have the optionality of turning off another. I can see that as a problem that needs to be solved, but as a secondary problem to having the wrong engagement platform. Yeah, that's my
opinion. I think in the case of I have a CDP to connect to my engagement platform, and that's my primary use case. It's probably not a good reason to have a CDP because it should be doing different things than that. I mean, that problem has largely been solved at this point, and I think most CDPs would be more interested in not solving that problem for you. As it's a bonus to them. The primary use cases I see for CDPs today are cleaning data, centralizing it for machine learning, or for destinations that aren't as broadly, I would say, accepting of data from like engagement platforms like you mentioned, Braze, Iterable. These guys, they're very, very good at taking in data because that's their business, right? Like if they can't take in data, then they're not going to win. But if you are trying to pipe that data into your healthcare CRM or to your own built microservices or CRMs or to Salesforce, there's a lot of places that getting data in and out is painful, and cleaning it and giving it governance is painful. And so there's a lot of things the CDP I think still very much solves for. And I think, yes, for engagement platforms, they've been doing this for years at this point.
You're totally right. You're totally right about all of that. I just would rather I'd rather the CEP do all of that. You're kind of doing you're refashioning data and you're refactoring it in ways that it should be able to be accepted between two platforms that should be able to be integrated. And maybe this is a perfectionist world, but an unrealistic one. But ideally, if you need to connect your POS with your whatever HR data with your Salesforce instant, whatever it might be, that should be a problem that is solved by those platforms, because that is not a weird use case. That is very much a standard thing that you should be able to do, and those platforms should facilitate that. But I agree. We don't live in a world.
And now your CEP is now focusing all their energy on getting more data pipes opened up and
Data
what do you know? You're a
portability, I
CDP
think,
now.
should be a priority of any of these platforms. I think that should be the thing.
It's basically your point, Toby, is that, or your take is that there should be a CDP within each of these platforms, essentially. It should have its own capability to do
call
that.
it that.
Already
And,
is.
all these things are being like, we are a CEP plus CDP. No, you're just a CEP that you're able to integrate effectively. And that's right. So yes, but put it simply, I suppose data portability should be important to every platform, and they should standardize methodologies for doing so. It's like having an adapter for different connectors and having, I wish the world would just use one plug socket, right?
Yeah.
And we couldn't all have adapters so we can connect things together. And, it just seems like there's a better way, but yeah, we're digressing.
I mean, you're the product guy, and you're the one that sees it, and that's why you're here. That's why you're where you are.
Yeah.
You got to dream it up before it can happen. Okay, that's awesome. That was like one of the best hot takes we've had so far, and exactly the spirit of what I was looking for.
My partnerships team, the partnership team is probably going to call me up and be like, "What the hell are you doing?"
That's fine. You're a product person. Like, you gotta rock the boat,
Yeah, I do. I find that when we speak to, we have a PR team as well, and I do have hot takes that I feel like when you're speaking to a publication, you've got to have a hot take, otherwise they won't print it. So you've got to poke your elbows out a little bit.
Yeah, you can't just toe the line. You got to push forward.
You got to be a bit controversial.
So we've talked a lot about AI on the podcast recently in different lights, but I think there was when we were prepping for this, you brought up that there's some confusion around like generative versus other types of AI tools. And so I think starting out, with the state of AI in marketing right now, kind of breaking that down for us, would be a really great way to start.
Yeah, it's one of those things where AI, everyone says that AI, and then no one's AI, and everyone tries to, there's this big thing at the moment around AI washing, and, there's a big thing with the SEC around companies saying that they now do AI because it's this, it's like the .com bubble, right? Everyone was a .com. Someone was telling me the other day that there was like a guy who I can't remember what it was. He was like a plumber, and he put .com on the side of his van. He didn't have a website, but they put this.com because it makes you sound, back in 2001, made you sound like this was you're a big deal. And I think AI has become that to some extent, where everything is AI because it's supposed to be. So that's one problem where AI is kind of meaningless, because it can mean predictive AI, it can be used in the application of neural networks, it can mean machine learning, it can mean using LLMs, it can be agentic, where you've got LLMs making decisions. I kind of categorize it in a number of ways. There's one is AI, which is just using it for no reason, and I'll put that aside for a second. And then there's kind of two other types of platform. One, which I would describe as predictive AI, which is propensity scoring, which is predictive segmentation, which is predictive churn, which is finding out which asset is the right one to use, what offer is the right one to use, product recommendations. And I would put things like Movable Ink Da Vinci in there. I would put OfferFit in there. I would put AMP in there. I'd put, CEP-based stuff like Braze Catalyst in there. And then you have the generative AI tools. And so you've got the foundation stuff. So obviously you've got OpenAI and Gemini and all that kind of stuff, but you've got these kind of more SaaS enterprise tools such as Jasper.ai, Writer, Copy.ai, and all these other ones, which are using generative AI to come up with kind of enterprise level content or foundational model services across your business. So it could be not only for marketing, but legal and HR, whatever it might be that implements AI in your business. There's a big directive in a lot of these large brands to businesses to implement AI everywhere and gain the productivity and efficiency gains that it brings. And so you have this generative AI world as well. I think where we sit, we try and get the best of both worlds when it comes to predictive AI and generative AI, meaning when you have predictive AI, especially what I would describe as these content selectors or AI decisioning, where you might select from a fixed number of assets, select from a fixed number of hero images, banners, might select a different subject line, a different body, whatever it is. That creates the need for huge amounts of content. If you've got 20, 30 assets and you're swapping them in and out for different users and trying to make a personalized experience, you run out within days, right? And in the generative AI space, you can create all this content, but you've got no idea what to do with it. You've got, you can create different assets and you can come up with tone of voice based message bodies and all this kind of stuff. But there's a human that has to then take it and put it in the right place on the CEP or wherever it might be. And so what Jacquard, what we do is we combine the generative side, so we can generate huge volume of content, and we have predictive side so that we can select who should receive that content, where should they receive it, and plug it into the right place and distribute that content to where it needs to be. So that's where I kind of see it. I was at CES in Vegas a few weeks ago, and these businesses are very much kind of self-sorting into this kind of generative AI or predictive AI space. And I think that there's still very much a need, or there is an increasing need, to combine these two things into a single platform.
Do you have a term for it yet? Are you working on it?
That's a good question. I probably should, shouldn't I?
What about Jacquard AI?
To be honest, maybe this is my second hot take of the episode, where I think AI is going to turn into a bit of a dirty word. In the same way that no one calls themselves a .com anymore. Like, if the hypothesis is true that AI is so great that it's going to be pervasive in everything, it goes back to this: if AI is everything, then AI is nothing. And really, we should be talking about performance. We are a performant content generation platform. AI is going to be in everything. So when people say, oh, we do this AI, we do that AI, or brand it as AI, I think there's going to be a bit of a, when this bubble inevitably pops, people are going to say, we're not that kind of AI. We're natively, we've always done it this way, and that kind of stuff.
We're scalable AI.
Yeah, everything is, like I say. So I think about it more about, we utilize generative AI, we utilize predictive AI, but at the end of the day, we solve a real world problem. And I think a good way of thinking about it is, like, why do people open a message? Why do people, if you receive an email, push notification, SMS, whatever, why do you open it? It's typically the who, so who sent it, so it's the brand. It's the where and the when, so the time it's sent, it's the channel that it's sent on. It's the what, which is the product or offer that's in the message. And no one yet, from at least what I can tell, thinks about the how you say it. And so, and the how it's articulated to you in the words that are used. And so I think about us as the how. Like, we solve for the how. You already do the what and the where with your CEP, send time optimization and intelligent channel. You've got your predictive AI to work out the product and your product recommendation and the offer, but nothing has told you, actually don't say, I saw this demo the other day, and it was like these 3 different platforms of predictive AI and deciding the right offer and the right products and the right time and the right channel. And the language was like, great deals for hikers, or it was like, great deals for runners, great deals for climbers, great deals for and I'm like, you spent $1 million on these propensity segments and these predictive this, and you lost it at the last mile, where you could have articulated that in the way that person could have benefited. So thinking about the how you say something, that's what we think about. And it means you can add value no matter what your stack looks like. If you don't have the predictive recommendations, and you don't have the predictive offers, and you don't have your send time optimization, you still need to know how to say it. You still need to know how to articulate a generic message in a way that's, at least for the bell curve, great for that campaign, even if you're not doing it on a personalized level. So that's what we think about, is how can we use all these decisions that you've made with all your data platforms, predictive AI, how can we use that to make your brand sound engaging and resonant with whoever receives it?
Your Jacquard, your contextualized personalization engine.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, I think I've heard that term.
Well, that's what it is. That's what we call
hundreds
it.
of companies. Yeah.
We call it, well, we debated between calling it contextual relevance and personalization. Problem is, personalization to some extent is this, it's kind of like AI. It's like,
it's like whitewash.
Have you ever written an email where you use someone's first name in the subject line? Like, it's no. I mean, no one's ever. And
Don't
it's
do
like, it's like whenever I receive an email and it says Toby, and I'm just like, that's a brand, and they're trying to sell me something. And it's like, their marketing teams are going, we personalize that. Like, nice job, guys. Like,
well done.
They use a merge tag, and we're like, finally, we're personalized. And we use the first name. And actually, that has become distinctly unpersonalized now. When someone uses my first name, I'm like, you're not really you're just kind of, it's a gratuitous personalization when really I want them to speak to me like I want to be spoken to. I want it to sound like someone sending me an email. You know
what I wish I could do is like those databases that collect all that information about you that they're basically reselling to these brands who are then grabbing that first name personalization. I wish I could like change my name in there. So when they do all the, email address mapping or IP mapping where they're getting that info, I would know that it was from a brand that I've actually never interacted with or didn't give a legitimate name to.
So here's a good tip. So I don't know if you've seen my LinkedIn, done your research, but on my LinkedIn, I have a world emoji just before my name. And I do it because when I receive LinkedIn messages, if the emoji is in the message, then it's a merge tag. And if it's not in the message, they've written it because no one would put the emoji. They wouldn't go and find the emoji because they know it's not part of my name. So I can now tell if this is an automated message or it's someone personally reaching out. So you can do
I like that.
That's great.
Yeah. Hot ticks and hot tips. There we go.
There you go.
We've established what Jacquard is and is not, the state of AI and how AI and personalization and .com may all become... already.com, but kind of personal. It's like how everyone was saying multi-channel or omni-channel at one point.
It's not just becomes table stakes. I think at the end of the day, it becomes table stakes. And then when you start talking about it, you're like, obviously, I think AI is going to become that, where it's like, oh, you're an AI company. Like, oh, that's...
What else?
It's like being you're an internet company. What does that even mean? Like we solve for the how, and I think that's what we are as a business. Yeah.
So we're talking about contextualizing it. We have a segment here where we'd like you to share 3 keys to effective AI. Again, in this case, it's the predictive / generative together Jacquard way of doing things. But would you mind sharing these tips?
My sales team's going to get mad at me. There's not one way of doing it. Like I said, there is plenty of value in a product recommendation tool. And there's plenty of value. And as you guys know, there's plenty of value. And a lot of time, there's a lot of value in doing something very simple. The kind of the Pareto law of, 20% of the work will get you 80% of the value. I think if you're not doing anything, doing something is going to give you big results. I think the way that we think about it is obviously that we add value regardless of what you're doing in the rest of your stack. So that's the way we think. I'm not saying that way is better than this way, but if you've got predictive AI and you're doing all that decisioning, then great. And if you don't, fine. There's not necessarily an order to it, I suppose is what I'm saying.
So it's less black and white and more like a Kinsey scale where, you're meeting people where they're at. It depends, right?
Yeah, there's a 7-dimensional grid of different ways you can take this. No, I think at the end of the day, just making sure that you're taking the approach of the needs of the business and not taking it from I need AI. A lot of these business leaders are like, we need an AI strategy. It's like, no, your problems that you're solving are the same as they've always been. It's customer lifetime value, it's average order value, it's repeat purchases, it's retention. And what are the low-hanging fruits that you need to solve for that? And sometimes it is, we need to have some strategy about, we're giving everyone 20% off. Maybe we should be a bit smarter about this. Maybe it is we need to do some kind of send time optimization because we're the kind of business where that has a big impact. Food delivery is probably one where send time optimization is massively impactful. I imagine car insurance renewals, I don't think it makes much of a difference if you send it at 9 a.m. or 5 p.m. So the different businesses are going to have different needs about the kind of tools that they need. But I would take it from a business need approach and then say, okay, what are the things we need to solve for? And a lot of the time it is, we have generic messaging. We have very poor open rates. We don't have great brand affinity. And then the answer is, okay, well, how can we leverage AI, or what are the tools out there that can help us build customer lifetime value, help us build retention, help us get more conversions? And if you're either already doing that stuff or that stuff isn't as valuable, like I say, in certain businesses it isn't, then suddenly Jacquard's the answer. But in other situations, it's not. It's all about what are the needs that you have. And I wouldn't just take it from let's just throw AI at all our problems and see what sticks. It's much more about being nuanced about it.
So Toby, question from my end, which is, you're obviously building a product around AI and you're building this sort of effort to will say, generate a business result, right? Whether it's increasing lifetime value or any number of other metrics that a company's tracking. What does that mean to you from Jacquard? Like, we're talking about, I'm going to change the copy. Like, how much should I attribute that as the value versus the 5 other things that you listed as being the most impactful thing, right? Does the how equate to 100% of the value if I was able to get them to engage with it? Or is it like 10% or 15% of the value if I've done the predictive and the recommendations and everything else?
There's not one answer, but the answer to your question is that marketers have always been very good at testing. And, the way that our product works is that, at least for the first initial campaigns, you put in your human control and you put in what you would have said if you weren't using Jacquard, and we'll test that with a small subset of your users, and we'll see the impact that how has. I mean, the way our campaigns work is if you leave them running long enough, we will always beat human language. We weigh, the way I think about it is our predictive language, the way our performance prediction works is it weighs, it's like a weighted dice, right? And it's not always you're not always gonna win, but if you're a casino and you roll the dice enough times, the house always wins, right? And so the way our product works is we know we have a predictive, we generate language and we know what language is more likely to engage, and we just generate a shit ton of that, right? And then if you put it into a campaign and you drop poor performing variants and you introduce better performing, introduce more variants over time, the human control will always fall out at one point. And so the way that we think about it is it's not whether we can add value, it's when. It's literally how quickly. And at the end of the day, and to some extent, how much. And so it's just about testing. It's about taking what you would have done. We can even, what we do with prospective customers, we go and get the language that they're sending, and then we go send them what we would have sent instead. We said, oh, you sent this campaign, you said this, we would have said this. And our performance prediction said that we would have got 25% more clicks, 20% more clicks.
But all that copy it's not, what you're saying is, and again, in this sort of testing example, is one version for everybody versus a separate version for every individual user that you have, depending on how much data you have on them.
We have multiple products. So we have something called audience optimization, which gets you the best performing language for that campaign, assuming you basically have no data. We can come up with better copy. We can take a billboard and say, this is the language you should use, right? With no personalization, and because we know over 60 billion data points over the last 10 years that this language on average engages with a greater number of people than that, and so this is what you should use. And then we have our personalization product, contextual relevance, whatever we want to call it, where it takes in the user data and then finds, instead of finding the bell curve of what is the largest cohort of users, we can take that up, we can do the whole thing. And we can actually say, for this group or this person, you should be urgent and exciting or casual or friendly, and it should be a long message or it should be a short message. With this group, it should be something completely different. And we found it with different brands. Ironically, maybe not ironically, maybe this is obvious. The older cohorts, people who are 60 to 70, prefer completely opposite sentiments than those who are 20 to 30. All these brands spend millions of dollars trying to speak to Gen Z, right? Trying to work out how can we remain relevant? And actually, whenever you change your tone of voice and you try to appeal to a certain group, you're going to not appeal to another. You can be an old man brand or you can be a Gen Z brand. Very few are both. But actually, if you are able to change your tone of voice, to change the way you say something on a personalized basis, you can be something to everyone to some extent. And the final thing I say in this, there's a very philosophical question that comes out of this, which is, what does it mean to be a single brand and have a single brand identity if you can be 1,000 different brands to 1,000 different people? Is there a point in a brand? Is there a point in Adidas or whoever it might be, Nike, to try and articulate themselves in a certain way if they can do it so many different ways to so many different people? And I think different brands are going to have to reconcile with a decision on, actually, we do want to have the single identity and we don't want to be too personalized, or they're going to go, no, we want to maximize maximize engagement. And so we want to be different things to everybody.
One of the fun things about of your different product lines and also marketing in general is that the first thing you describe, the first product is sociology, where you're putting information out to everyone and then making judgment based on large swaths of the population and how they respond. Then as you get more data over time, it becomes anthropology. You are dealing with smaller groups and you get to know these segments, these groups, and you cater to them. But then finally, what you guys can do, it comes down to psychology, which is like one-to-one messaging, where you've worked your way down to the point where you can now personalize it literally for that person.
It's interesting. I'm in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and if personalization is not a new thing. If I look at the ads, the billboards around here, they are to someone like me, right? And if you go to deep Queens, the ads look very different, right? If you go to the Upper West Side, the ads are very different. And that is taking to location. It is a zip code is a fascinating data point because it takes into account typically income level. It takes into account age. It typically takes into account the number of kids you have, right? Because everybody in the Upper West Side are a certain age, they have a certain number of kids, and they earn a certain amount of money. And so you can really, that is a level of personalization, to your point, even at an anthropological level. So it's nothing new. We're just able to do it in a digital interface, knowing those data points. And I'd love to be able to get the zip code for what we do, because that tells you a lot about a person.
Stephen, weren't we talking about something? There are some pitfalls about like, when we were planning the podcast with Laura, there's some pitfalls about like zip code based marketing.
It's the geolocation stuff where like if the geolocation point isn't accurate, you're making a lot of assumptions about where somebody is that might be completely wrong.
Yeah, geolocation and zip code is very different. I'm still the same person on a business trip to Indianapolis, right?
Yeah.
But my zip code is here. Right. And if you're telling me about some, country club in Indianapolis, it's not relevant to me because I don't live there. Right.
Yeah.
But if you're telling me about a shop down the road in Williamsburg, then it is relevant, even if I'm in Indianapolis, because I'm coming back. So your zip code and geolocation are interesting. Geolocation, I think, is very interesting for transactional, and I land at the airport and Uber sends me a push notification. Geolocation is great for that. But, I think in e-commerce, retail, financial services, all that kind of stuff, healthcare, zip code is far more valuable to me as a data point. Yeah.
Being a person who is always thinking about making sure that what we do is profitable for ourselves and for our clients. For our final point, something that comes up whenever we introduce a platform partner, whenever we talk about platforms, if you're talking to a marketer, they might have to dig in a little bit, but they'll understand it pretty quickly, like what the value is for them. And they may even understand what the value is for the business. They usually do probably, but when you go to a CFO or a CEO and you have to talk about, okay, so it costs X, the ROI or ROAI in this case always comes up. So when you have those conversations, like how do you tackle those conversations? Like how quickly, incrementality, things like that?
There are hard ROI type stuff and there's soft ROI type stuff. We think about it in two ways. There's obviously performance. You get more opens or more clicks if you use Jacquard. And what is the value of a click or an open to you? Well, our average increases by this much. And so our average ROI and performance is this. It's a very simple, we are quite close to the money in that regard. We can attribute, if the human copy generated this and we generate that in terms of clicks and opens and conversions, it's quite a straight line to show ROI in that case. And then there's productivity and efficiency. Those are a little bit more nebulous. Then it's, okay, well, your creative team spends this amount of time coming up with this content. When you come up with scalable solutions like Jacquard, when we can generate 10,000 subject lines, that's a harder ROI because you weren't doing that anyway. And would you be able to do that with a team of copywriters, 1,000 monkeys with 1,000 typewriters? Like at the end of the day, ROI in that case is a bit more nebulous and it's a bit more tough. But what's nice is that we can demonstrate both. There's quite an obvious productivity and efficiency gain by having a platform generate lots of content And then as there is an immediate performance gain of using better content in place of what you're doing today. And so that's how we think about it, at least. There's also a risk element that I think is kind of understated, where there is risk in using AI when hallucinations come into play. But at the end of the day, there is humans in the loop, there's approval processes. And it's a bit like self-driving cars to some extent. Self-driving cars don't need to be perfect. They just need to be better than human drivers, right? And in our case, we can come up with brand compliant. You've received emails that say first name in it rather than your actual first name. And they didn't do the curly bracket for the
It says F name.
Yeah. It's not like human error doesn't exist. And we can ensure that your content is calibrated on brand, compliant, performant, in the right place, to the right person. And there's ROI in that. That's also hard to measure, but what's nice is we have the fallback is your content will just be more performant using us, and everything else is gravy.
So for our copywriter friends out there, is Jacquard friend or foe?
I would answer that question as the invention of the paintbrush didn't prevent artists, right? It's another tool, and it enables you to be more creative. Jacquard enables copywriters to be more creative and it's always been about productivity, and productivity isn't about replacing jobs. It's about doing more with what you've got. And copywriters still use Jacquard. And to be honest, they actually, us going into a business and saying content creative is important and it makes a big difference. Copywriters are like, I've been trying to beat this drum for years, right? And everyone's been talking about which offer and product to do and the time and channel. And actually it's the content that makes a big difference. And so we haven't seen at least anybody shying away from or fearing what we've got. If anything, it is a tool to be used. And in the same way that Photoshop is a great tool for artists that allows productivity, it doesn't mean that role goes away. It means that it's just another way to express that creativity.
And we've seen our creative team really embrace tools like Jacquard and Movable Ink's DaVinci platform and other similar things for exactly what you said. But I know that there is a real fear out there of AI replacing jobs. So I think having that as a little vignette is really helpful, because we do agree with that.
And I just want to add to that last thing. Like I would say in the world of these Movable Ink DaVincis and these offer fits, there is certainly those are tools which are, in my eyes, an arrow in the quiver of a marketer. I think we operate in a very different space in terms, like I say, the how and the creativity of the language rather than the selection. So I don't want someone to think, well, I'll either need one or the other. It's very much like all of these tools represent ways to improve value in what you're doing. So I think it's important to say that we just take it from that approach of the quality and the performance of the language rather than selecting between assets.
Yeah, no, I mean, in a perfect world, like our clients use Jacquard and Movable Ink and high-touch AI decisioning for different reasons, but all obviously in
and that's happening. Yeah, we're seeing that a lot. It just comes down to where do you put those dollars?
Toby, I mean, I think this is great in everything that you're describing. Like, I can see the pile-on value, so to speak, of having that. The point at which we can get somebody to engage with a message. I think the only thing that I hear from CFOs and from CMOs around anything involving AI content is, what is actually incremental versus what is just changing the timing of somebody who is going to do something anyway. And channels like email and the certain ones that you affect, if we look at these trends over a larger period of time, before and after, looking, what was the performance of this audience in the control and in the treatment group beforehand? What is their performance afterwards? Like, if that's not meaningfully changing over time, then regardless of how much increased engagement we see in clicks and opens, right? Like, is this solving that, or is there something else that we should be doing to better leverage the tool? And I think whether that's do I need to look back at what am I feeding the platform to make it effective? Like, do I have enough offers? Do I have enough good enough things that people want to buy? So where do you kind of draw the line between, this is where we're helpful, and like everything here is like, you got to focus on, your product, your audience. Like how do you kind of see that where like maybe you're not solving, you're solving sort of a lot of things working well.
Yeah.
where do you solve it where, it's less within the message itself?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. It's going to be different for different brands. I think at the end of the day, though, I kind of go to that example of that brand that had all these different propensity models and offers and products, and then they send a very generic message, maybe to an interesting group of people. Obviously, I have a biased opinion on this, but I think the how is almost the first thing. The how you say something should be the first thing you think about, because there's no point in spending $1 million on all these different platforms if the last thing is generic. And we can, like I say, we can take a generic billboard and make it more valuable, or we can take the product that's recommended, the offer that you want to provide, the weather and the location of the user and their location themselves, and come up with a contextual message. And so there's value to be had at whatever stage you're in. And what you don't want to do is, whilst these platforms are valuable in deciding what product and offer you can get and which hero image should go in there and which footer goes where, if no one's opening that email, right? If no one opens the email with the product recommendation, if no one clicks on the push notification to get to the in-app that's doing it, what's the point? I think the how at least can be valuable no matter where you're at, but you don't want to waste that. That can be valuable, but the value compounds, right? If you do it all. So at least that's my view.
Gentlemen, we are at time. I want to thank you so much, Toby. I got really excited for this conversation. We did the prep call, and it turned out exactly like we wanted. So thanks so much for being here. We are obviously big Jacquard fans and big Toby fans, and big
great.
Pat and Sherrod fans. But yeah,
thank you for having me on. I'm going to do a shameless plug that I host my own podcast called The Array for any of your listeners, and I'll shamelessly plug your podcast on mine as well. Yeah, hopefully your listeners understood a little bit more about Jacquard.
Awesome. Yeah, and share the link. We'll put it in our in our LinkedIn posts and stuff, and crank those views.
That's
nice.
Right.
Yeah.
And hey, I'm a big follower of the Array of Objects, so I'm really excited to listen to the Array now.
Yeah. You're exactly the kind of person who we're dedicated to.
Nerds. No, just
nerds.
Well, not kidding. I was going to say just kidding, but I'm actually not kidding. All right,
Go
guys.
Birds.
All right.
Birds. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Go Birds.
Bye.